They are the greatest. You underestimate the English professionalism. They have been observing you, they have been studying you, they have been watching their weaknesses. I was there, day after day, hour after hour, and say, we will not boast. We will simply prove ourselves on the battlefield. And you saw what happened? Greatness of any kind requires hard, painful, sustained slog. It doesn't come by somebody patting you on the back or us dancing in the street saying we are the greatest. England took 300 years before it became what it was. In our country, we are only just emerging from medieval period. Still a long way to go, and we think in 10-15 years' time we become a superpower. Forget the superpower bit, with all these problems piling up. The hard, painful work that we are going to have to do in different walks of life requires enormous amount of effort. And it's in that context that I want to turn to the second part of my lecture, which is how do we get out of this? Who can contribute to this? And I think it's in this context that the civil society has begun to play an important role. Now, I am tempted to spend some time, but I shan't, on this concept of civil society, because it is our job as a philosopher to analyze concepts. This is a concept that appeared in European thought for the first time in the 17th century. Civil as opposed to natural society, much scenario. 18th century, when the economy breaks out of the social control, civil society comes to refer to the capitalist economy. So when Marx said in his ideal society, civil society will be abolished, what he meant was class contradiction will be abolished, and so on. With us, I think civil society was never used by Gandhiji as far as I know. Panditji's writings, it doesn't appear, or speeches, it doesn't appear. Jay Prakash during his movement never said, I was mobilizing civil society. It's a recent entrant into our political family. But whatever it is basically refers to those kinds of movements in which people take over this power, appropriate political power, and say, this is what the people of this country intend to do. Which is why it is very striking in the debate about the Anna Hazare fast, there was always this talk about people versus parliament. That civil society is somehow equated with people. It is outside of and in opposition to the state. So increasingly we are now getting caught into a kind of binary mental trap. State bad, civil society good. Politics evil, politicians evil, civil society wonderful. See how easily we slip from one bogus binary into another. And this is where we seem to stand. So people say civil society will intervene. And I say to myself, I can't find it. Where is this civil society? What you really mean is that people, not politicians, but people who are not attached to any political party, would initiate movement and would start something. But those movements could be good as well as they can be bad. Both are civil society. You couldn't therefore say that civil society is the home of angels. Civil society tomorrow can throw up a movement saying we stop reservation, or we take over Babri Masjid, or we do this, that, or the other. So the idea that the state backed civil society good, like almost, remember George Orwell's 1984, 2 red animals bad, 4 red animals good. I think we are in danger of falling into that trap. The other thing to bear in mind is that civil society is a mixed bag. It includes social movements, it includes NGOs, and it includes popular political movements of the kind that we saw. And all of them have different logics, different histories. There is also worth bearing in mind that there are certain kinds of struggles which civil society has systematically ignored and generally gets to ignore. The tribals, the movements of the poor. They don't easily fit into the civil society mode, and if you keep thinking only of civil society, then the vast area of struggle in our country gets obscured, falls outside of view. And I think it is also important to bear in mind that civil society itself is not free from the fourfold crisis that I talked about. The erosion of sensibility, is not simply limited to our politicians. It also extends to other areas of life. And in that context, even at the risk of being controversial, I want to apply this analysis to the movement that has just ended, namely Anna Hazare's fast. Great movement. Purpose was absolutely right. Corruption must go. We need Jan Lokpal bill, and those who have studied it would know that it has sharp teeth and improperly administered to work. It has difficulties, but we need to go through all that. And yet, when one looks at it, one begins to see that the erosion that we saw is also reflected in a movement which is so deeply rooted in civil society. I was very surprised, for example, at the phrase Team Anna. It reminded me of a corporate brand. Can you think of the Mahatma ever talking about the Team Mahatma or Team JP? What you have is one individual engaged in a particular activity, surrounded by 3, 4, 5 professionals who manage him, and you form a team. So everything is done by the team, which reminds me of a multinational or a corporation. The phrase itself, I think, is suspect. Then the inflated language. Second, freedom struggle. And you ask yourself, please wait a minute. Second freedom struggle would mean that the first was led by the Mahatma, you are the second Mahatma. And that's a very tall claim for any of us mortals to make, that I am the Mahatma's avatar or successor. But equally importantly, to talk of it as a second freedom struggle is to imply that nothing has happened during 65 years of our independence. The first ended in 47, then there was a dark period, and now we resume our historical journey in 2011. What about the achievement that I talked about? What about the contributions of Vallabhbhai and Panditji and Shastri and others? That first freedom struggle did produce results, not enough, still a long way to go, but it did produce results. And to say that this is the second freedom struggle that we start from 1947 is not only to use exaggerated rhetoric, but also to insult the memories of those great men like Panditji and Jayaprakash and Vallabhbhai, who gave so much to us. Then, of course, the idea of fasting in the public Maidan. Can't remember the Mahatma doing this. Forget the Mahatma. Even when smaller figures like Morarji Desai or others went on fast, to do it and to turn into a public theatre, where people after people turn up and the tricolor pasted on their cheeks, and you begin to say to yourself, fast is intended A, as a moral weapon,